And we're back. Thank you, everybody, for watching Everything's Eventual. The first of 3 feature-length Dollar Babies that we have here in the festival. Although I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, this was the first feature-length Dollar Baby ever, was it not, JP?
That's what I understand. Yeah, I don't think there was one before me.
Excellent. Well, I'll get into my question about that in just a minute. But for those of you who don't know, J.P. Scott was born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona. He spent most of his adolescence and childhood living on a golf course, a.k.a. the world's biggest backyard. Many of his fondest memories were made in that house and in that yard, which spurred his creativity as well as his childlike heart. In the summer of 2008, he was selected for a 5-week directing internship at 20th Century Fox with the hit show Prison Break. That experience further confirmed his conviction in becoming a film director. Weeks after the internship, Stephen King allowed J.P. Scott to adapt and film from his work Everything's Eventual. The film has exceeded all of his expectations for his first feature. He's very proud of the work put into the project and will cherish the experience for the rest of his days. And honestly, I can see why, because this is now the 3rd or 4th time I've seen Everything's Eventual, and it is just a spectacular adaptation. And obviously, as you can see from the conversation that we've been having on YouTube and Twitter, everybody else feels the same way. So congratulations on that, JP, for sure.
Thank you. I won't deny that I was a little worried how people's reaction would be to this film. It's been 12 years since we made this movie, and it's heartwarming to see that that the fans enjoy it, because that's why we make this, is because we're fans and we're making this for other people like us. So it's great.
Absolutely. And what was it in particular about this story that drew you to it?
So the story of how I came to learn about Dollar Babies is kind of intertwined with this. I was watching Stand By Me while I was packing my bags to go to that internship that you mentioned just now. Stand By Me was playing on TMC, and they put little like text blurbs, like factoids about the movie and stuff. And one of them said, "Did you know Stephen King gives rights to his movies for $1 or whatever?" And I saw it for like a split second, and then it went away. And I'm like, holy crap, what was that? And I immediately Googled it, and I find what it is. I discovered Dollar Babies, and then I immediately go buy as many Stephen King short story audiobooks as I can, because I have a long drive to get to Hollywood for my internship. And I start listening to stuff. And Everything's Eventual was the first thing I listened to. And it was, that was the bar that everything else was judged on for me, and just nothing else came close to it. I don't know what exactly it was about it. I guess I really identified with Dinky, the main character. This tragic, young, naive, altruistic individual that is trying to, or at least thinks he's trying to do things right, and then he discovers that he is woefully wrong. And so I guess that's part of why I chose that piece. It really it spoke to me, literally and figuratively in this case.
Yeah, it's amazing, and having read the story several times, I would have thought that it would have seemed like almost an insurmountable challenge right away, because it is a story about writing letters and someone in his house and spending a lot of time sort of by himself and kind of trying to figure out what's going on in this sort of weird new life that he's found himself in. It's not an incredibly action-packed story to read, and yet you were able to just make it come alive in a way that just makes us want to keep watching it the whole way. So can you tell us a little bit about how you tackled that and brought those letters to life?
Sure. I mean, a lot of sweat equity in this movie. I mean, what I tell people now, especially looking back, 12 years ago, looking back at this, is when the movie finishes, watch those credits. There are hundreds of people that are in those credits that this movie would not exist in the way that it is today without them. I played a part, yeah. I played a decent part, but I couldn't have done it without all of them. And to answer the question about like how do we tackle this kind of not action-based film, and that's actually, by the way, one of the reasons why I liked it. I love movies like the things that people don't think are Stephen King. The not traditional horror films that everyone thinks about. So that's one of the things that I really liked about Everything's Eventual. It wasn't that. It was a different type of story. But I mean, from a production standpoint, how we did that was a crap load of CGI and an awesome artist named Mirko von Berner, who designed all of the symbols. I think those actually help tell that story visually. All the Burks and the Views and the Smims and the Founders and all of those. Those having that alphabet, and it was a literal alphabet. We had 100 characters that all had a little story behind each and every one, and having those actually really helped tell that story visually. Because ultimately it's a guy. Someone commented in the chat, basically, murder by wingdings, I think he said.
It's totally true, but you're absolutely right. I think that it was that having designed that language of symbols that you have done, or that your team did, really is that thing that sort of just elevated it to a very cinematic kind of thing. Like when I had originally read the story, that's not the way that I pictured it. And so to see it the way that you've realized it just totally makes sense for a visual medium, for sure. Absolutely. So I took a little bit of inspiration from you in our Dollar Baby that we made, and I think you may remember that I contacted you very early on when I was in the process of making the Doctor's
Case. I do remember,
because of the fact that you had decided to make this a feature length. And what was that decision? Had you decided right from the very beginning that it was going to be longer than the sort of traditional 45 minutes, or was that something that's kind of developed?
Yeah.
As you were...
So I mean, quick shout out to Chad and Mikey, who we have Chad, who was the writer, the script writer, and Mikey, who was our Dinky Earnshaw in the chat and YouTube right now. But the answer to that question is with Chad. I remember, when we started having conversations about how are we going to make this script, and what are we going to leave in, what are we going to take out, and all that stuff. And I remember, it came down to let's just write it and see what we have, and then we'll chop it up and figure out what we want to. Let's put everything in there and then decide what we remove. And he comes back, and we're expecting a 25-page, 35-page script maybe. He comes back with 66 pages, and we read it, and he's like, I took out stuff too, and we're like, okay, well, let's add some. Let's put a little bit more meat on it. And that's what we ended up doing. I think Chad made some excellent decisions in doing the linear flashback narrative style. I really think that plays so well, and the script being written that way really helped us shoot the film and have it be as good as I think it came out. That's why it's so long, is because we ended up just not wanting to cut out anything.
Well, and again, just from my own perspective, it totally works. Like, I wouldn't have wanted it to be any shorter than it was. I just felt that you tell the story brilliantly. And I know that there are some Twitter questions and things that we have, but I had one other question.
Selfish.
Sorry, I know, but I haven't been back on the mic for a while. Did you not actually have a very limited theatrical run of this film?
Good question. I wish. So here's what happened. Steven, if you're listening, I want to make another movie and I want to sell this one if you'll let me. There's people who want to see it. Stephen King was kind enough to give us the rights to the film to attempt to sell it. In a nutshell, without going into a ton of details, the contract that we got from his lawyers was really tough to achieve. And me, as a naive, stupid young filmmaker, should have negotiated, and I didn't. So they kind of took me to the cleaners a little bit. But we needed $1 million and 1,000 screens up front to make the release. The best offer we got was $50,000 and 300 screens or something. It was a decent offer. 300 screens nationally was a great distribution offer for a film like this, but ultimately it didn't satisfy the contract, so it was a negative. But King, if you're listening, you can still make this right.
Well, hopefully he is listening. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Leah to ask some Twitter questions.
Well, obviously we need to start with Derry Public Radio's haikus. I think they're drinking while they make these, so I know, but now everybody wants their haikus. So look what you guys have started. Dinky gets a job, but are the perks worth the price? Dinky mail is sent.
Nice.
Everything Eventual, 5 out of 5, blue chambray shirt.
I'm going to suggest that Derry Public Radio actually do put together a little book of these haikus.
Make a little book. I'll design it.
Email sent.
We'll send it out to our filmmaker friends.
Do we have any questions from Twitter?
I do, and I don't know if we kind of touched on them a little bit, but so Lumpy_speed bump. I love your guys' names. Is Dinky using an actual drawing program, or is it something created just for the movie?
Created just for the movie. Labor of love, man. Shout out to Greg Pylon and all of the CGI and all the computer effects you see. Those are all composited in after the fact in post production. That was all green screen on the computer monitor.
Oh, wow.
All of that's custom CGI. Fantastic job by the team. You can't tell. And this was made in 2009 on a shoestring $50K budget. We made this for about $50,000. So, I mean, great job for the team on that.
Back to Dairy Public Radio. No, they haven't written a second haiku about you, but they want to know how you came about to create that actual icon language. Like, was there any method?
Yeah, Mercure von Berner, he out of Madrid, he created the language, and we had a conversation about what all of the symbols actually mean and what they do. And then he kind of took that and created this entire alphabet. And if you notice in the end credits, everybody, all the major characters and crew, they have their own special character that's just theirs. Like mine's the scorpion.
So cool.
Cavan's is the chevrons. Dinky's is the hand. Joe Jones is the sword. Everybody. So, I mean, just all of them have meaning behind them, which, again, I think made them so much more impactful.
That's really, really cool. It means so much more to you guys knowing that when, other people seeing it.
And by the way, if anyone gets to watch this again, watch the opening scene. Now that you've seen the movie, watch the opening title sequence, and now it all makes sense again. Like it's a cooler title sequence when on the second viewing.
Yes, and I've
shout out
definitely
to Jenny Grinder on that.
I can definitely attest to that. So we only just have a few more seconds here before we need to get on to our next film. But I do have one more question for you, and that is, what are you doing now? Like, it's been 12 years since you made this amazing film. What is going on in your life right now? What are you working on?
Sure. So I got to direct another feature film after this one, which was awesome. And then I developed a lot of scripts and stories, none of which really amounted to anything financially. I ended up transitioning into marketing, but I make commercials now in marketing. But I'm telling you that the movie bug is biting. And I think I'm coming back soon. So that's what's coming.
Well, that is a fantastic piece of news to end this conversation on. I can't wait to see your next film. Thank you so much, JP, for joining us here today and for sharing Everything's Eventual with us. And we really look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you. You guys are great. So happy you guys put this together.
Cheers. Thank you very much.